Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about doubts. The question topic comes from Rebekah. The text will be in the description of this video as always. So Rebekah actually wrote to me months ago and sent this to my personal account, my page, I think, my CuteWitch772 page account, and so I just got around to putting it in the list. So this is a question that's been ongoing, and I think that that is fitting because this is the kind of thing that is always relevant, especially for, I guess not especially for me, but I would say it's definitely relevant for me at different times. It's something that when you have trouble with it, even if you then overcome it for a time, it's stuff that can come back later. So it's something that is always relevant for someone, and often also for the same people over and over again. So it's not necessarily something that I feel like, oh, we can just solve this and it'll be good forever, right? So we're talking about doubts. So Rebekah wrote, how do you deal with your own self-doubts about the magical things you've accomplished/experienced? Do you have any tips or tricks for silencing the voices of anxiety, doubt, the voices of those who have worked to condition you to doubt yourself in every way? Not surprisingly, I find it even more difficult to access any abilities I have when my doubts kick up and I'm stuck trying to remind myself that it doesn't matter what others say because only I know the truth of what I've done/experienced. It's just hard sometimes, and I was wondering if anyone had any suggestions, experience, or ideas with this issue. Thank you. Love and light to all. End quote. So, yeah, absolutely I have experience and ideas about this. But again, I don't think it's something that we can necessarily solve all at once. There are definitely things that I do to try to help myself through these moments when they come up. And before I even get into answering this little piece by piece, I'll say that I feel like it does get easier over time. Not that you will never experience it again, because as I said, I think this is something that comes back up at different times. So I don't mean it gets easier in the sense that the more experience you have and the longer you've been doing these things, eventually you just won't deal with this anymore. What I mean is the more experiences you have that you trust, that you can then remember, the more things you'll have in your past experience and in your mental toolbox, so that in the future when these doubts come up, you have even more evidence, sort of, to give yourself from past experiences to say, no, I know that this is right. I know that what I'm doing is right. I know that this works for me. I know that this is real. Whatever the case may be for you, fill in the blank. The more past experiences, the more evidence you have for yourself of that, the easier I think it gets to remind yourself later when these things come up. So I do feel like now it is easier for me than it was a decade ago, for sure. And I hope that a decade from now, it'll be even easier than it is now, because it certainly is not super easy right now. It's just easier than it used to be. So the first part of the question, how do you deal with your own self-doubts about the magical things that you've accomplished or experienced? For me, when I was first starting out and I didn't necessarily have a lot of magical things that I had accomplished or experienced, it's very much based on belief. It was very much based on logical belief following how I think the world works and looking at, if I believe this, or I believe in certain things, like I believe in cycles, and I believe that nature is all in cycles and that the cycles of our lives mimic the cycles of nature. I didn't even mean to reference a video that I did recently for this channel, but we recently talked about what the cycles of nature mean to us, so maybe I'll link to that at the end of this video for you. That was 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago, maybe? Anyway, so if I believe in things like that, cycles, then thinking about things like that made me think like, well, what about reincarnation? What do I believe about the afterlife and things like that? Well, it would make sense to me that if I believe everything happens in ongoing cycles and there's not really an end point, then it makes sense to me that I would believe in reincarnation that just continues and continues. And so I don't think I necessarily believe in an end point. of reincarnation, that like eventually you get to the end, because I believe very heavily in the cycles of nature and that they are ongoing. And so that makes sense to me. So yeah, when I started, it was very much just based on, this is an intrinsic feeling that I have about how the world works, even if I haven't experienced it happening yet. And then it was a matter of doing little forms of experimentation with trying out different ways to do ritual and different ways to do spells, and figuring out what works for me and what doesn't, and keeping a record of that. And this is what I did on this day at this time. This is what the weather was like. This is where I was. This is what I was wearing. This was what the moon phase was. Like literally anything that I could think of. And then being able to look back at that. So I did recently on my personal channel talk about how I record my practice and showing a lot of the notebooks and things that I use. So I am a big proponent of recording things in your practice so that then later you can look back and say, well, okay, I did accomplish something with this spell or this ritual. You know, I accomplished my goal. I found something happened in my life that was in line with my intention when I did this ritual. So I might look back and say, well, how long ago did I do that ritual? How quickly did I notice this manifesting? And then, so if I try a similar thing in the future, then I, try to keep track that way and figure out what works, what didn't. And if I don't notice something working, if I haven't manifested something or, noticed something in my life based on something, then I'll look back and like, well, what did I do? Maybe I did something that just doesn't work for me. Maybe I should try it a different way. Maybe I didn't word it correctly. Maybe there was something else going on that, not having it manifest was actually the best thing for me. And I have a belief that things like that could be the case. Sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we asked for because it's important to, be careful what you wish for, because sometimes it's not the best thing. So I do think that the universe gives us things that aren't exactly what we asked for, just to teach us a lesson to be more careful. But other times, if it's something that would be really negative or really harmful, I think it just doesn't manifest. And then the lesson is, you don't always get what you want, So things like that. So for me, it was about experimentation at the time. As I moved on further in my practice and I started gaining some different experiences, or I had some really profound experiences with meditations or trance, stuff like that, then then it just kind of adds to my, again, that mental toolbox of saying like, okay, I've had some experiences now. I know that this is a thing that I am capable of, that is possible. And so sometimes if I try it again and I don't experience anything, it's no longer because, well, that thing isn't possible. Then it's, was I focused enough? Was I trying to do something that I shouldn't have been trying to do? And the universe was like, no, you can't have that, whatever. Then I start thinking, okay, it was situational because I already know this thing is possible and I know that I am capable of it because I've done it before. So something else must have been going on, right? So there's also, I think some people have an expectation that once you can do something, you can do it every single time without fail. And I have found that that's not the case. Just because I have experienced something really profound and meaningful and magical one time doesn't mean that every single time I do that same practice, I'm gonna get a big, shiny, sparkly, profound, result. But that doesn't mean that the practice is no longer worth it. It just means that you're not always going to get a big, loud result, right? Sometimes we get the big, loud result to convince us that this thing is real, that what we're doing is real and that it's worthwhile and that we are capable of doing it. And then the rest of the time, we just need to do it because we know that the practice works and it's helpful. So, for example, not wanting to give too much detail, this is a very personal thing to me and to the group that we were working with, but I worked with a group of witches a while ago and we worked a spell together they were individual separate spells, but we were doing them all together. Like we were taught how to do a certain thing. We all did it with our own intention. And we sort of like gave ourselves a signal that like, this is what you will experience and you will know, okay, your thing has manifested. And I can't remember if it was that day or the next day. I think it was the next day. That signal happened in my life. And it was something that I always knew magic worked and was real, and it was something that I had a belief in, but I had never had something manifest the way that this had manifested. You know, some people can see energy, some people really feel and sense energy in kind of a tactile way. Some people hear messages from spirit auditory wise. So everybody experiences things different ways, if that makes sense to you. And usually I'm not a visual person. I don't always see things happening in the physical world. And in this case, something visual manifested. That was a signal for me that, like, boom, this is really working. And that was even more a signal for me because that's not usually the way that I obtain messages from the universe, right? So the universe was like, we have to do something big to let her know that this is real. Now, I've continued using that practice because I proved to myself that I can do it and that it works for me the way that I did it. Maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me. So I've continued that practice, but I have never again gotten as big and profound and meaningful and sparkly and flashy of a symbol, of a signal, as I did that one time. So there's also a matter of expectation. It's not expecting it to be like fireworks, like the movies, every single time, because that's just not how it works. But because I've had that experience, if I ever had any doubts about that practice, which I didn't, it was a type of practice that I'm very familiar with and already believe in and use. But if I had any doubts, or if in the future I ever start to doubt, I have that experience. So I'm like, no, this happened. Just because it doesn't happen for everybody doesn't mean that it doesn't happen for anyone. You know what I mean? So, and I do also have a belief that things happen differently for different people. I believe that we are all different vessels and different lenses of magic, energy, the universe, whatever term you may use. And so I believe that the universe or goddess or whatever term works for you, I believe that it speaks to us differently. Like I said, some people see messages visually, some people hear things, some people sense things. However it comes to you, different people have different ways of being sensitive to those messages and of receiving those messages. Another way that I get them a lot is by opening up a book and looking at a random paragraph and boom, it answers a question that I've been asking myself and the universe over and over. Or when I ask a question of the universe and I get on social media and I immediately see 5 posts from different people about that same subject. And then I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention because I'm a very reading-oriented person. I'm a very word-oriented person. So I get a lot of messages that way. For somebody else, that might make no sense whatsoever and not speak to them at all. So I'm a big believer that because we are all different vessels, we are all different lenses, we all see things and experience things through our own experiences that we've had previously that colors our lens a little bit differently, that things will happen for us differently, that we will perceive things differently. And so my screen just got dark. I want to make sure my phone's not going to turn off on us or anything. Anyway, so do I have any tips or tricks for silencing the voices of anxiety, doubt, or the voices of those who have worked to condition you to doubt yourself in every way? Whoa, do I have any tips or tricks for silencing anxiety? I wish I did, because I have. That is a thing that I deal with on a regular basis. Really, when it happens, I ride it through. I just ride the wave. And sometimes it helps to speak to people and get positive reactions. When I get really into self-doubt and negativity, my partner and I always say to each other, stop being mean to the person I love. And so that kind of reminder from someone that when I'm really down and I'm doubting myself and I'm being very negative toward myself, maybe it's my partner saying, hey, stop being mean to the person I love. Say something nice about yourself. Say something nice about yourself. And sometimes it's me just going about my day, talking to people, and realizing that what I do is worthwhile and people do care about the work that I do. And if I'm having a bad time, then I'm having a bad time. But that doesn't mean that everybody looks at things the same negative way. I think that we are very often all our own most harsh critics, our harshest critics. That's definitely true for me, and probably for a lot of people. So yeah, when those things come up, I let myself feel it. I kind of just ride the wave. I don't try to stuff it down because I think that that's unhealthy. But yeah, I try to remind myself of positive things, read nice things that people have sent me saying like, what you do is important. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, just because I don't think it's important right now, just because I'm having a bad time right now, you know. There's a saying that a lot of people like now, it's a bad day, not a bad life. Like, if you're having a bad day, you're just having a bad day. That doesn't mean your whole life is bad. That doesn't mean the whole week's going to be bad, the whole month's going to be bad, whatever. So, it's a bad day, not a bad life, that kind of thing. Silencing the voices of doubt. Yeah. Talk to people maybe who have had the experiences that you believe in, maybe if you haven't had them yet. Talking to people and getting their experiences of ways that they have experienced things that maybe you just haven't had a chance to yet or whatever. And the voices of those who have worked to condition you to doubt yourself in every way. Conditioning and social conditioning, like all of that. Ooh, I'm not going to talk about that in depth right now because I could go on for a while. Like, that stuff really bothers me. That is such an unfortunate thing to have as an influence in our lives, and it is a thing. It exists. There are people who will do whatever it takes to get you to doubt yourself, and I have gotten to the point in my life where, depending on who they are, because I know not everyone in your life is someone that you can just get rid of, but I've gotten to the point in my life where if it is possible, I just don't associate with those people anymore. I don't have time for it. I don't have the energy for it. I have no desire for it. It's just rudeness. And that's different than, like, I have friends who don't have the same beliefs that I do in witchcraft and paganism and stuff like that, but they don't go around trying to convince me that I'm hallucinating or something, you know? Like, they accept me for who I am. They don't share the belief, but they don't think that I'm lying. They don't think that I'm delusional, whatever. Like, that's fine. So I don't just mean people who, like, because disagreeing doesn't mean, what am I saying here? Disagreeing, like somebody not believing the same thing as you, doesn't mean that they are actively trying to convince you that you're a liar or hallucinating or something. You know what I mean? So what I mean is the people who I cut out of my life are not just people who don't believe the same things I do, but they are people who actively act against things that I wholeheartedly believe are true, capital T true, and important, and that are very important to me. But that's just me. I know that not everyone is at that place or can do that. But yeah, and just more and more, whatever you can do for yourself. I consider, like, doubt to be an issue with, for me personally, when I'm doubting myself, it's because my self-confidence is waning a little bit maybe, or I've taken a negative comment really to heart. It's really affected me, and so the kind of work that I do would be based around letting myself feel what I'm feeling, but then concentrating on the positive aspects again to remind myself that that is not true, right? That is just a place that I have gone for a time that is low, that is negative, and that is not ultimately true. And I'm feeling it, and it's okay to feel it at the time, but it is not the ultimate reality of my life. And so I do what I can to remind myself of that it's just a bad day, not a bad life. And for me, it's also something that, because it relates to maybe self-confidence, the way I view myself, or the way that I think other people think about me, which is like a meta-stereotype, to use one of my prejudice theory vocab terms. What I think other people think about me, that stuff all ties together in lower chakra related energy stuff for me. If you use the chakra system at all, that feels like solar plexus stuff to me, but also sacral and root base. Like, so the lower chakras are really where it's our foundation. Like, when something like that gets to me, it's rattling my foundation, and it's, you know, threatening to knock me off my center. And so you can think of center as various things or places in your body. Some people think of it as solar plexus. Some people think of it as a place in your body. The solar plexus is actually lower than what most people think of as center, I guess. It depends on the system that you read about, that you work with. But for me also, like, my core of my energy happens to be more like near my heart. So my core worth, and like where my core worth resides, can mainly be anywhere between my heart and my sacral chakra, like anywhere in this center, like the trunk of my body. And so I might choose to do solar plexus work. I might choose to have, I have paper in front of me, I might choose to have some colored stuff that reminds me of those lower chakras and bathe myself in that color energy. I might choose to work with crystals that have to do with those energies. I might work with grounding crystals, and that's just something like if I feel like I need a tangible thing. Another thing that I do a lot is take baths lately with salts to like remove toxins, like physical toxins, but also just remind me that it is also an energetic cleansing. And so, yeah, there's lots of cleansing things that you might choose to do if that's part of your practice, that you really feel like you'd like something kind of like a ritual, something physical to do, maybe lighting incense and having yourself be cleansed by the smoke, whatever it is, you know. So those are some tips and tricks that I might use if I'm feeling like I really need something more tangible than just talking it out and feeling it. So I might, yeah, spend some time with a yellow candle or a yellow crystal or orange or whatever feels like the thing that I need at the time. Another thing that I do a lot is get outside and go for a walk now that the weather's nice. Being outside in nature really brings me back to center. And also something that I've been practicing a lot lately is, especially if the issues are coming to me through social media and online, I stop using social media for a while, and I don't check my social media for days, and I don't go online a lot. You might notice if you follow my personal channel that I haven't posted any new videos on that channel this month, and that's partly because the video that I was trying to edit for the first weekend is giving me so much trouble that I can't edit it, and I've been so upset that I can't get that video up yet because it was going to be like a series of videos. It was going to be all through the month of May, and it's not working out. And so part of it is because I didn't want to do something else while waiting for that, but part of it is because sometimes I'm just like, why am I doing this? You know, I have these doubts, why am I doing it? And I've been struggling with that a lot this year, but I pop back up, you know, every time I'm down, I'm back up. But I've made all my videos for Pagan Perspective, so this has been my one reliable connection. But yeah, other than that, if I'm not feeling it, like, I take a break from it. If all my negativity is coming from social media, I don't check it for a while. If all my negativity is coming from a certain person, maybe I block them on social media or from my phone if it's someone, you know, who has, you know, in my real life, whatever it is, you know, I cut off that connection that is draining me at present. And if it is healed through that and there's some time away from it, and then maybe I reestablish the connection and see what happens from there, but maybe I don't, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, what else is in here? Yeah, it's hard to access abilities when your doubts kick up, I know, and you're stuck trying to remind yourself that it doesn't matter what other people say because only I know the truth of what I've done and experienced. Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, just because something works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else. Just because someone else has experienced something doesn't mean that you're going to experience it the same way or at all. So again, these are just good things to remind ourselves of. But yes, it's hard, and I was wondering if anyone had suggestions, experience, or ideas. So those are my suggestions, I suppose, and I'm not saying it's foolproof, obviously, but I definitely have a lot of experience with this type of thing. You're not alone. Pretty much anything anybody has ever asked me about online over this past decade, they're like, is it just me? There's maybe like one thing out of 1,000 that I've heard that I'm like, yeah, maybe that's just you. Most things, like the other 999, are things that we all experience. These are things that we all experience. And so I think another important thing about it is to remember that like, just because not everybody's talking about it all the time, and I think now it's becoming something that we talk about more, but especially in the past, nobody really wanted to talk about negative things. Nobody really wanted to talk about these dark times that we go through. We have talked about having a dark night of the soul on Pagan Perspective before, because you guys ask us about this kind of stuff. But yeah, just reminding yourself that you're not the only person who's ever gone through this. You're not the only person who's going to go through this. You're not the only person currently going through this. Somewhere, someone is dealing with the same thing. And let's not have the false expectation that it'll never happen to you if you're a good practitioner, or if you're a good enough fill in the blank, you'll never have doubts. Let's get rid of that myth, because that's damaging, because then when it happens to you, you think, what have I done that is now making me feel like this? Or why are these people trying to make me think that I should be doubting myself when other people don't have this? I think other people do have this. This happens to people. So yeah, thank you for asking us to talk about it. Once again, anything like this is always good to bring up because it comes up over and over. Thank you. I didn't mean to make the video this long again, and I clearly need some water because I've been talking for too long. So I'll see you next month. Next week is Subs Week. I will see you next month right here on the Pagan Perspective, and my personal channel is CuteWitch772. There will be some links up on the screen to subscribe to this collab channel, Pagan Perspective and me, and there will be other videos. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.